It is December 4th, 2014, and I just mentioned more about the Dixie triplets. And there was a little bit more that came to mind about it that I want to mention. So, one thing that I will say about not knowing where the location was is, I think it was in Coquille. And I also remember that the vehicle that this Dixie was driving at that location was an SUV, which is true for the Coquille location. In Moses Lake and in that location, it was sedans. It wasn't an SUV. And why it was an SUV, I'm not sure. It possibly could have been an SUV because even something like the car was, getting its tires checked or something at Les Schwab, and so she had a loaner car, or the car was being worked on, something like that. But that's how that was. And also, one of the doctors that showed up, though, was, from what I remember, was a Wenatchee doctor. So it was kind of strange because this was, I think, in an Oregon location, but it was a different doctor. And then I was just thinking, remembering more about that SUV actually reminds me of the fact that this identical swapping was also occurring in a Washington area, because there is an SUV involved in that. Sorry, I'm a little bit tired right now. But but it wasn't my parents, and there was a woman who was typically driving. Usually it was Sue. It was a Sue, and I believe it was the Sue from CASA, who now works at the Wenatchee CASA, and she was driving the SUV vehicle. And or it could have been Sue, my Aunt Lachlan's dog show friend. But what I remember is that it was this possibly Sue, who worked at the CASA. At least later she did. And another person who I believe drove an SUV and did some other transportation location was possibly Mary Ann McIntosh once or twice, and possibly Anne Crane as well. So right there, that sort of makes for two Annes and two Sues. And they really did like to mix the names up and the people up a lot, so that, it was hard for a kid to remember everything. But it was definitely an SUV, and occasionally my Aunt Lachlan, it seems like, went with us. But when that happened, it was also a transportation thing, where I had to go along, and then identicals were getting swapped. And so how did the United States do this? Like, how did they work this out? Well, for one thing, my mom became a realtor, which, when she did that, it became convenient to go to show a house, and then once you're in the house, there's a different Dixie that was already there, just swap them out. And I'd see that, and they'd want to be hiding in one place, and the other would be in the other place. They did it in doctor's offices, dentist offices, like they want to go back to see the doctor privately, and then a different one would come out. At their own parents' house, they'd go there, and then one would already be there, and they'd get exchanged. any imaginable place, like even an office, sometimes a bathroom. You could go into a store and it would be prearranged that maybe one Dixie would be in a bathroom stall. So the other Dixie would go in, and then they just trade out. And maybe the other Dixie, I don't know how she got out without being detected that there were two. But sometimes, bathrooms were in the backs of stores, behind their main public front and everything too. So there were a lot of different places where you could swap people. And one time, I even remember being on a plane one time, and one of the women on the plane had a wig on. Well, I mean, I kept looking at her because I thought she looks just like my mom, and I was very little at that time. And I thought she looks just like my mom. And I kept staring at her because she looked like my mom, but she had dark brown hair. And then they watched me. These other people watched me, and they all sort of thought it was cute because of how in awe I was, just staring at this woman who I knew had to be my mom, but I thought maybe I was wrong because she had this dark brown hair with bangs, basically like a Uma Thurman wig kind of a thing. And so I didn't really see too many disguises like that, like wigs and that type of thing, but a couple of times I did. Maybe just a few times. Usually they just swapped them out, the way that they were and looked and everything. They just went to a secret location to do it. But there were a few times that minor alterations were made to their appearances so that they could go back and forth and not be as detectable. So anyway, that is just to confirm that I am not nuts. And this has been going on for a very long time, since I was a little girl. Since I was born. Which then also raises the question about, who was I born to? I'm not sure. And, I think at different times the government wanted to pit me against one Dixie and not the other one, and that kind of thing too. Or have different people mad at me. And I, not knowing, I'm sure I did some horrible things to one of them that really cared about me. And, or maybe more than one that cared about me. And I didn't know because the government was using one or more of them to torture me too. So when you're a kid and you just see them torturing you and you don't realize the government's behind it, you bond to this person you think is your mom, but then it raises a lot of questions about why is this person doing this to me? Like sometimes after extreme and severe, prolonged, and many years of torture. At one point, I remember feeling like I hated her. But I hated who? I don't know which one I hated. And I don't really know that I hated any of them. It was that, really, I hated the United States government for what they were doing. And it's true to say that I still hate them because what they've done is despicable.